Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Working Out with Darius. I'm very excited tonight. We have music therapy. We're going to be talking with Gregory Douglass, I'm having such a fan moment with having him on the show. I'm such a fan of his. So work with me as I get through my jitters of talking to him, because there's so much of his music that has really touched me, and we'll get into that. And then also, really, really good friend of mine, Tabatha Robinson-Scott, dance educator, arts advocate. She's a beautiful Black woman and definitely someone that is on my team and in my corner. And we're going to talk about mental health and how it affects her work in dance and things like that. So we are going to get started. One of the things that I want to do is talk about what consistency looks like for someone like me who is diagnosed with bipolar 2. So one of the things that I normally do is I normally will have a dance clip every week. Like I had started doing that. And something struck me, because one of the things that I want to do on the show is I want to remain authentic in everything that I bring to the show. So part of the reason why we're having this discussion is to normalize conversations around mental health. And a part of that normalization is understanding the things that people who manage their mental health deal with. So the other night on my Instagram, I posted that I woke up at 2:00 in the morning, wide awake. What happened was I tried to a part of my medication process is before I go to bed, I can take medication or whatever to put me to sleep. And for some reason, well, I shouldn't say for some reason, it is very normal for me to wake up in the middle of the night. So 2:00 in the morning, I'm wide awake. And I thought when I looked at my phone that it was 2:00 p.m. and that I completely missed my 11 o'clock meeting with my producer. So I am frantic at 2:00 in the morning, having a whole anxiety attack, when I finally was like, it says 2 a.m. Like, let me open my window curtain. And so it was dark outside. So it was 2 a.m., decided to watch Tangerine. And what I did on yesterday was I went to a tea dance. And anyone that loves me knows that I love dancing. And that's one of the reasons why I do the dance clips. But having the episode that I had last night, being up for most of the night and getting up today, dancing was not the thing that did it for me. And a part of what I learned when I was in my outpatient program and when I was diagnosed with bipolar 2 is that we have to have several things that we can go to and that we can choose from when we need to tap into our coping mechanisms. So one of them is for dance. It's dance for me. So Sunday when I went to the tea dance, it wasn't working. The music was great. The DJs I love, but nothing connected with me. And today I spent a large portion of time re-listening to Gregory's music. And I realized that dance definitely moves me, moves my body, but music and lyrics moves my spirit. And that's really what I needed. So I'm going to share with you a song that he does that I absolutely love. And we're going to watch this short clip and then we're going to bring him on.
Under the gun, coming undone, and having much fun anymore. Why should I go on? Under a naked sky, my suicide lullaby, make love to the madman inside, let it linger on. Maybe I'll never learn, get nothing back in return. Or maybe I'm just giving up. I can still hear her saying, you will strip down your pride if you just make up your mind. No matter what you decide, you'll never make it right. I'm gonna go
Welcome, Gregory Douglass.
Hey.
Oh my goodness, man. It is so good to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So Under the Gun, just real quick, because that was off the album Stark, which is by far probably, okay, so here's how I'm going to start for you, and only use this as a point of reference, not a point of comparison. Adele 21. I listened to that entire one, the one that has Set Fire to Rain.
Yeah.
I can listen to that album at any given point in time, the entire way through, and not skip a beat, not skip one song. Your album does that for me. And I realized that today when I was listening to your music again, and I was like, I'll just start at Crazy Love because I really like that piano ballad. And I was like, okay, and then I'll skip to this one. I was like, nope, Upside Down's coming up. We're going to just keep flowing. And I'm like, oh, nope, let's just keep it going. So, man, thank you so much for that project and your gift as an artist.
Thank you. Wow. That's the ultimate compliment, truly.
So, yeah, I am going to say this. One, I'm trying to breathe and calm myself down because we all know that I'm having a manic episode because of my insomnia last night. So I'm going to try to keep it calm. I'm trying to speak slowly so that everybody can understand me. But no, I really do appreciate you as an artist. I want to talk about the first time that I heard your music was back in 2007. And it was a song called Hard. And at that point, I was really making some major decisions in my life to leave a relationship, to come out, and all this good stuff. And so listening to that song over and over and over and over and over and over and over again for probably 6 months to a year, and then finally like reaching out to you and like connecting with you as an artist was amazing. So thank you so much. Even went to a couple of your shows. I remember we met at a couple of your shows. And yeah, I just was like, this dude, first of all, can sing. Like for real sing. And then just like your material and your content. So talk to me a little bit about your process overall, because I know that can be hard, because I know creativity can come from many, many places. But just a little bit about your process altogether as an artist and how mental health kind of plays into that whole part of your work.
Well, I love that we're talking about the creative process from this standpoint, because it's really only been recently that I think I've thought so clearly about how important mental health is and how much it's been a driving source of my creative mission. I mean, I really was never very clear about that until recently, because it's always been my therapy. So in many ways, it's felt selfish, you know. I actually heard Bill Clinton was interviewed on Stephen Colbert once years ago, and he said something like he felt like selfishness is selflessness in many ways, because when you're really doing what you love and you're stepping into your truest self or your highest level of self, you really are contributing something tremendous that is hard to even contain, hard to even measure. And that in itself, when you're sharing that with the world, you are connecting in this super important way. And that is, you know, helping people and in their own mental health, you know. And so I have realized in hindsight of just like my whole discography of music, it's been and just seeing how much the music has helped other people in ways that musicians that I love have helped to me. I mean, it truly, music saved me, you know, growing up. And I think that in writing and playing instruments, learning how to play instruments and learning about lyrics and melody and everything, it just became my therapy to get me through. And then, you know, really started to help other people along the way. And
right.
Yeah. So for me, it's a very intuitive process.
Right.
Because I think, you know, there are all sorts of strategies that people talk about with songwriting that are very strategic, very what am I trying to say? I just said strategies and strategic in a row. So there must be a better word. Well, but, you know.
I think that you're talking about like a formula, right?
Right, exactly.
Start here, and it's because that's what the strategy is about. A strategy is like having a formula in your head of where you want to get to and how you want to get there, right?
Yep.
But then there's this other part of it. As a fellow singer-songwriter, nowhere near as notable as you are, but but I think that there's a part of it that is really about the fact that you have something, that you have this voice and you have something that you want to say. And even if in that song you aren't saying necessarily something directly about yourself, it is still an expression of something of some type. So like I definitely get that and understand it. I want to ask you particularly about an album that you wrote that was around a very influential TV series that was influential for me, 6 Feet Under. So 6 Feet Under was an HBO show that really hit home for me in a lot of ways when it came to my mental health. And you wrote an album about it, and you talked about how you watched this series. And can you talk a little bit about that album and where your mind was in that place?
Yeah, I was totally taken back by that series, and I just remember it was like, such a brutal winter. I was living in northern Vermont and just like spending most of my time inside, and I just dug into that series and was drinking a lot of red wine and crying a lot and like just for me it was the timing of it as well, just seeing something tackle death as beautifully as they did. And the soundtrack, I mean, the music supervisor who chose all of the music in that show was just a lot of my favorite music. Such good writing, such good acting, just so real, just so raw and real, the issues that they tackled.
Right.
And I was going through a very transitional time too. It's kind of the beginning of the music industry really taking a whole new shape, and wondering where my place was in that after so many years of committing to being a touring artist and a recording artist. And it was really kind of the beginning of the internet, of music becoming dominantly streaming. And back when I started as an indie touring artist, I would tour anywhere and not even be concerned with what I was paid, because I knew I would make enough money in CD sales wherever I went that I wouldn't have to worry. So you can imagine how much has changed since then.
Right.
And yeah, so I don't know, that show really hit home with me. I think a lot of discussion and symbolism with just death in general. It's just like the transition of things, the end of one thing and the birth of another.
I think what particularly interests me in that album now is that as we're experiencing COVID, and you and I had a conversation on yesterday, we talked about how we're all grieving. We're grieving this normalcy that we've had, and that's why it's almost like literally, if you think about it, think about the funeral where someone is completely acting out and they're screaming and they're crying and they're throwing themselves on the casket. But that's what you see when you're out in public. Like, people are refusing to wear masks. They're refusing to let go and really embrace where we need to go in order for things to become some sense of normal again. And that is like that is the machine that is COVID and this pandemic, like putting everything in this glass petri dish, and just letting it sit for months and months and just kind of seeing what happens. Yeah, but
absolutely.
That album, I'm telling y'all, Battler, it was Battler, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that album, and particularly there's two songs, Day of the Battler, that is amazing. Your vocals on that song are killer, and Harlequin, and both songs, and to me, most of your music, and even when I look at you, like I and this is just my perception of you, personally, is like you have a very like this darkness about your music that actually sheds light to me in places, because you're actually bringing awareness to these like darker issues or whatnot. And Harlequin was one of those songs that I'm just like, whoa. So what was the thought? Do you remember like the thought process behind that song in particular? Now I'm just kind of fanning out. Like this is like a little bit more than what the show is. I'm kind of fanning out this moment, and then we're gonna move on.
Okay.
First 15 minutes. Let me grab my little whatever. But yeah, Harlequin off of the Battler album. What was that?
Well, I mean, that's probably the most direct 6 Feet Under influenced song. And I really felt like, you know, when things get dark and things feel out of our control, exactly to your point, that comparison that you just brought up, and the times that we're in now that feel so uncertain. We're going through the whole range of emotions, trying to work it out. And it often feels like a total circus, you know? And so I wanted to bring that like vaudevillian vibe to both of those songs, actually. Yeah. And Harlequin just sort of feels like, you know, I just had this image of like just this jester, you know, performing for the king, and just how that must feel, and how I could relate to that in the time that I was in, and can once again during these times.
Right. It's amazing that song in particular is one that stood out for me on that album, because I just had a conversation with another friend of mine, and I was talking about specifically, you know, the fact that I had I'm in this manic episode, had this whole anxiety attack in the middle of the night, was up for 4 hours. And yet, you know, had I been working a 9-to-5 job, I'm expected to show up and perform just like I would on any other regular day. Yeah. And the thing, what people don't understand or realize is like these types of situations happen for me on a regular basis. Like I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm up for hours on a regular basis. And so like the way in which I can construct this jester mask after being like exhausted and tired is quite can be quite complex for those of us who deal with mental health issues. I want to segue into a pivotal moment, a conversation that I had with you, because like I said, I was introduced to your music, began chatting online, came to a couple of your shows in New York City, and then I invited you for my 30th birthday party to perform because you were doing house concerts, right? And I remember that particular week, I was having this entanglement, as Miss Jada would say, with this one individual, with this one guy, and it had started getting really, really messy. And all week leading up to my birthday, he was texting me, and I was like, "Leave me alone," blah blah blah. And I remember after the show, because even during the show, he was texting me everything. And then we were out for drinks. And I remember what you said to me, because I remember when we talked and I said I didn't. You were sitting down on the couch. You had your arm around Glenn. And I was at the bar and I was talking, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's been texting me all day. It's blah, blah, blah." And he was like, and you're like, "Darius, you like the drama." It's like you and you basically started talking about how like you realize that you like the drama and that you're in control over when and how this shows up. It's basically the gist of what you were saying to me. And that conversation in that moment really pivoted for me how I looked at my friendships and all my interactions in casual relationships, hookups, friendships, family relationships, and like what it is that I allow into my life. Because I had to understand that what you meant by like the fact that I like drama is that I like stimulation. I like fast-paced things. I like house music. I like things that are bright colors. I like that type of stimulation. So anything that makes my heart race, I'm good with that. So I had to start redirecting my energy. So thank you so much for that moment.
Oh, I mean, I'm so glad it was helpful and well received, because, you know, it's hard when you, I mean, I would totally say something like that and it would totally backfire with other people. So, but you know, it's just like, I think I'm in songwriter mode all the time. I'm just analyzing all the time. And if I weren't a songwriter, I would probably be a psychologist or something. Because it's just, that's the lens I view the world through. And I think that I can certainly relate to that too. It's easy for me to call someone else on stuff that I can relate to. And I've had to do a lot of work myself around that kind of realm. And I slip in and out all the time. So
right. Well, I think that's one of the amazing things about being human is the fact that we, set a course and a path, and that there are always hiccups and interruptions. That happens for us naturally. One of the things that we talked about after we, while we were talking about that is core values, and you were talking about how right now, especially during COVID, you are really clinging on to what your core values are. Can you talk about core values and how that is directing your path now?
Yeah, a friend of mine actually first pointed out that what's interesting about this time and the immediate challenge that I think we all had when it first hit was, it was just like, oh my God, what's happening? What do we do with all this? Suddenly being in quarantine forced us really to live in our core values, or at least figure out what those are. And for a lot of us, it was immediately clinging on to friendships or spending more time with family, or getting let go of a job and wondering whether you even wanted to be in that job to begin with. And it's like, well, maybe I want to do something different now. And so whether we like it or not, we are sort of forced to live in our core values. And I think a lot of us are choosing to recognize that now, and therefore going through all the different emotional stages of grief and what's next. But I think as a songwriter, I'm constantly challenged to live in my core values, because that's where the best songs happen. And that's where the most inspiring creativity happens, I think, because it's our truth. It's our, it's my voice through music, and that's the platform. And then it could be any platform, but if I'm bullshitting you, then it's not going to translate. If I'm bringing my truth to the table, then it will translate. And so I think that that's really what that's about. And I am thrilled to see so many people having the opportunity right now, whether they're clear about that or not. It's an opportunity to live closer in our core values and make decisions from that place.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely, man. Wow. I am so excited again to have this conversation with you. Definitely going to continue the conversation here in a little bit, because when we talked, you told me about, because one of the things that I don't realize sometimes is how, and this is totally from my own perception of myself, how close I become to people. So like there was a time where you and I were fairly close, talking on a regular basis, and I was, we were friends. Like I shouldn't say we are friends, and I didn't realize how much your friendship meant to me until like you were telling me about a song that you had written. And we'll go into that. Whiteout. Yeah, we'll go into that once I bring you back and talk to Tabatha, because I was totally floored when you told me about the song. So, but yeah, we're gonna bring Tabatha back towards the end. We're gonna move into that. Thank you so much, Gregory. You're amazing.
Well, thank you. So are you, my friend.
Thank you. And we'll see you here in a little bit. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
Awesome. Everyone, that was Gregory Douglass. I'm so happy to have him on the show. Like I said, a lot of that was my fandom, but a lot of my fandom is also tied into my mental health, because I'm a consumer. Like once I get on something, I will consume until the day is done. So I am extremely excited about our next guest as well. And I'm actually going to see if I can play a clip. It's Tabatha Robinson-Scott is an amazing dancer, performer, dance educator. I'm going to try to play a short clip of one of her a piece she choreographed, but Facebook sometimes does not act right. So y'all bear with me for just one moment. And it's not acting right, and we ain't gonna do that. We just gonna move it all through. So we're just gonna go ahead and bring on Tabatha.
Hi.
Hey, it is so good to see you, beautiful.
So good to see you.
Let me check that shirt. Just go ahead and yes.
Oh, wait. That's the video.
What? Oh, it's a video. You know what? And
yeah, it wants to play.
The minute that I don't want it to play is the minute that
of course.
Yeah.
Of course. It's fine.
Thanks, Facebook. So tell me, how are you? Tell everybody real quick, like who you are, what you do, where you are in the world, like your physical location, and real quick, yeah.
Well, I am a dancer, choreographer, and mostly an educator. I started dancing at a very young age. It became extremely therapeutic to me from the very beginning. And it was just something that I was passionate about at a very early age. My mom likes to tell the story of the first time I was on a stage. She saw the lights come up on my face. I was 2 years old, and she saw the look on my face, and she was like, I'm going to be stuck doing this the rest of my life. Like she knew that I was in for the long haul. But I fell in love with teaching in my teen years. I started assistant teaching, and I went to school, did my bachelor's and my master's, and also really fell in love with education and education psychology. And I knew how helpful dance was for me. So I wanted to make sure I instilled that in my students as well. So I grew up on the East Coast from Allentown, Pennsylvania. My parents are from the deep, deep South, and got a divorce in 2013, and then found myself kind of fumbling through, I know, yay, divorce. Found myself fumbling through who I was as an artist and trying to figure out what my career path was. And on a complete whim and out of angst and frustration, I applied randomly for a job in San Francisco that sounded too good to be true. And next thing I knew, I was flying out and interviewing, and I got the job, and that's where I am now. I live in San Francisco. I run a dance program at an independent school. It is an amazing institution. I got a brand new state-of-the-art dance studio. I teach about a third of the school. There's about 525 kids. It is represented by every zip code and every demographic, socioeconomic and racial, in the Bay Area, and serves over 72 counties, I believe. And it was a journey. I mean, it wasn't easy when I first moved out here. There's a big transition moving from east to west, but it was definitely something that I knew I needed to do. And as soon as I landed, I knew it was exactly where I needed to be.
Awesome. You are amazing. And beautiful. You're just doing it.
Thanks.
So there's so many ways in which you can go in this conversation, because you and I met at Northampton Community College, particularly because you would come and get your coffee break and I'm about to kill somebody break, and we end up these conversations. And one thing that I quickly noticed about you is that how well you navigate very bureaucratic and political systems that I don't have the patience to do. So thank you for that craft and for teaching me, because I mean there's a lot of ways in which watching you write your letters and conduct yourself in meetings has really helped me as well. But you have these intersection of identities, and even as an arts teacher, how that sets you apart from other educators, and being a Black woman, and being a woman, I don't want to talk about all your identities. You can talk about those. Just describe for me how COVID right now has caused you to look at yourself and your mental health and your state and all the things that you're dealing with, and in as many words as you want.
Well, COVID was a much needed break for me. I was on a very, very strong hamster wheel, and I had many gears turning at the same time, wearing many hats, and was fully prepared to do it through the end of the school year. We had just come back from our national dance festival, and I had taken 24 kids across the country to Pittsburgh, which was monumental, and dancing and teaching master classes and flying back. So I was hitting the ground running, ready to come into the end of my year. And it was a stopping point because it reminded me of how much I love what I do, how I need to pace myself, how I need to take care of myself, and how I need to do that first. Because I'm a servant leader, I'm a servant teacher, so I serve my students, and I often forget to take care of myself first. And the COVID experience really reminded me of a time when I had a very near-death experience back in 2016, and I had to stay home to rest, to recover. And it allowed me time to reflect. It allowed me time to just think about what I really wanted, to ask myself the questions that no one else is going to ask you, and to figure out what I really needed. And that I'm grateful for, but it was also very scary because it was so unusual and unlike anything we had ever experienced. And then, as we all know, in June, when racial tensions started to rise, that became another dimension. And I had to really think about my presence when I stepped in front of my students again. And that's where my focus started to shift. I started to think about when I enter the classroom, I'm already an agent of change. Like I am my own walking protest because I am an educated Black woman, larger than the skinny aesthetic of a ballet dancer. I'm from Pennsylvania. I have 3 degrees. I will kick your ass. Like there's all kinds of things. So, I already defy every single norm or stereotype, and that's been my entire life.
Right.
And so it wasn't anything new to me to be an agent of social justice because I feel like I do that every day. So that didn't shift for me, but it was just about being really, really conscious about what I present to my students to make sure that they go out into the world and they make it a better place.
I'm really glad to hear about you really focusing on taking care of yourself and putting yourself first. That's something that we've had many discussions about how, because Greg hit it on earlier when he was talking about, being selfish and how being selfish is being selfless. And what I've realized is being selfish is 100% okay. Being self-aware, 100% okay. Being self-interested, 100% okay. Being self-centered, that's the problem. Because, and we see it now, right? Because you have all these parents who are centering themselves around having their kids at home, these kids that you done lay down and have and are fully supporting. And now we're in this pandemic and they're centering their experience at home with their kids over the experience of a teacher and being in school and trying to send the kids back to school, you know. Though that type of self-centeredness where no matter what is said or done, you're going to center yourself in it and make it all about you. That's a problem.
Right.
Being able to take inventory of yourself and see where you fit in a larger piece and a larger community, I think is 100% exactly what you're talking about, what you've done and what you've also encouraged me to do. And I appreciate that. Like, hearing you, one of the things that sticks out about you is hearing you talk about your having a top 10 list when it comes to dating.
Yeah.
Right. Having that top 10 list. And I forgot your rule was, I think it's like, if you could hit 5 or 3 of the top 10, then.
Oh, no, you have to have a 90%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Like you can't be coming in with 7 out of 10. You need at least a 9 out of 10.
Exactly. And I'm so glad that you were open about your near-death experience. Well, no, it wasn't a near-death experience, excuse me. So let's talk about that a little bit more because you kind of glazed over a little bit. Only if you want to, because I don't. Oh,
absolutely.
Okay.
I'll talk about
it. Okay. All right. Yeah.
So I have a severe nut allergy, which some people make very light of, but it is severe. And I had a product that was supposed to be nut-free. It declared it on the label. I had less than a half a bite, and I immediately went into full-on anaphylaxis. I managed to get myself an EpiPen. I managed to get myself to a doctor, which was around the corner from my job. I was leaving work when it happened, and I went into full unconscious anaphylaxis. I was intubated. I was in a coma for 16 hours. I coded twice. So I literally died twice, and they brought me back. And I recovered. I woke up, and they were surprised. And they were surprised that I still had my mental and physical capacity, because I had been unconscious and my oxygen levels were 0 for such a long time. And after that, it was a substantial amount of recovery time, more psychological than anything. But physically, it took a really long time to get to the point where I could have the same kind of stamina that I had prior to the accident. So that was, of course, a pivotal moment for me, because, again, I was so used to doing so many other things. I think at the time I had 4 or 5 different jobs and a couple of side gigs. Like I was hustling, you know, and trying to find my way and trying to find the thing that was going to feed my soul and pay the bills, because you got to do both. And so that was super pivotal. And, you know, Darius knows I started to do other things. I decided to put my company on hiatus. I started to travel more. I started to get involved in a number of social justice events and be more of an advocate. And I was a board member for an arts council. So I started to do more things that I wanted to do, that you always say that you can do later. And I started to do them, and it was the most important thing I think I've ever done in my life, because I don't think it would have led to where I am now if I hadn't had that pivotal moment in my life.
Yeah. I think back on that year. That was 2016.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard to talk about that year. Because that was also the year that I had gotten into my car accident.
Yeah, I remember.
Where I fell asleep at the wheel. Yeah, full on head-on collision. So that year, and what we were watching at the time was the OA. We were watching the OA, and how that entire show was, it really just spoke to where we were.
Profound.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Imagery and everything. So I wanna get back really quick to, like I said, your identity as a Black woman. Kamala Harris is now the VP. There is a lot of reaction to it. So tell me, as a Black woman, what your thought process and what your reaction to it is.
Well, Senator Harris was a DA in San Francisco, which is now where I live. So I'm surrounded by people that already have a very strong opinion about her as a district attorney, which was years ago. I've always admired her work. I was rooting for her when she was running for president. I have slightly campaigned for her a number of times when she was running for president, and I had a feeling that she was going to be the pick. I think it's super important, especially in this day and age, to have someone that has so much grace and power to be in that position and be a Black woman. It says a lot for what the potential of this nation can be. We're not there yet, but I think it's possible to not only put her in office, but to give her the platform to have such a greater impact and literally be an iconic figure in our history. So I have the utmost respect for her. I have met her on a couple of different occasions and had a very intimate conversation with her in a crowd of people. And I was extremely grateful for it, because she totally didn't have to take the time to have that conversation with me, but she did because she saw me as a fellow Black woman. And I think that was important. So I hope that people will give her the respect that she deserves. I look forward to, and I'm also nervous about going into this election, but I think that she's a great pick, because I do think people underestimate her capacity to change.
talk a little bit more about, in general, about that level of underestimation, because I think that you're familiar with that. And because what I really want people to understand is how you as a Black woman, because different people have different opinions about Kamala Harris, all this kind of stuff, but speak particularly about the underestimation as your identity as a Black woman, and then like how that can garner a lot of support when you see another Black woman in this position. Like, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. I have been underestimated 98% of the time in my life. People make assumptions about me every day. And it used to bother me growing up. And then I remember my great-grandmother, who was 96 at the time, said to me, "No one's going to open the door for you. You have to put your hand on the doorknob. And if there's not a doorknob, you need to build the doorknob. And if there's not a door, you need to build the door." And that stuck with me. And as you know, I've navigated my own space. The path that I took through my career is not the way anybody would anticipate it. It's not the way it's supposed to go. I literally created opportunities for myself everywhere I went. And when there wasn't any, I would start something new or find another way or go to a different state or travel more. And so I am used to people underestimating me so much that when they actually acknowledge or deem respect, I'm shocked, because it happens so often. And I've gotten quite good at throwing a little bit of shade and also making sure that people understand that I'm not someone to be reckoned with. Okay. Like even now, my students have learned, and they push buttons in the beginning. I mean, my kids can tell you they really tried to find their boundaries, and I established them very quickly, and they know. And even my two sons, they are very much aware of the capacity, and I understand that in other Black women. I see that in other Black women. So when I see someone like Maxine Waters or Michelle Obama or Senator Harris, I understand just a little bit. I mean, I can't even imagine what Michelle Obama went through as First Lady, but I understand a little bit of what they went through or what they continue to go through. And I'm supporting them in every possible way. I'm sending my energy to them in every possible way. Even with my students of color, whenever I see that underestimation happening within their community with fellow dancers, I'm always the one pushing them forward and reminding them to navigate their own journey and don't let anybody else define you, because that's what we're expected to do. That's what we're told. I can't tell you how many times I've been told to stay in my place or know my place or stay in my lane. And I would say, I built the damn lane, so I'm going to go wherever I want. Right. So I think she has the potential to be a groundbreaker. It's just people need to get out of her way. And I think that's super important. And I'm here, I'm ready to stand aside and push people out of her way.
I see that. Awesome. Thank you so much, Tabatha. And we're going to continue the conversation. I'm going to bring Greg back in on it. And I want to talk about, hey.
Hi.
I want to talk about and really facilitate a conversation, because we've had to be very creative as creative artists during COVID. So can you talk to me about, so I know for me, the initial shock of like going into quarantine and all that kind of stuff was like, okay, WTF is going on? And it caused me to, like, I went through this series of things, coping mechanisms and things that I leaned towards when it came to my art and my craft. So if each of you could just tell me, like, COVID hit, pandemic, what did you, for your creative passion, your creative energy, what did you go to? Who or what did you lean on? Or what did you get energy from or inspiration from? Or continue to during the pandemic? Greg, you want to go first?
Well, I know that it was a rush of ideas, and for the first time I felt like, wow, the whole world is experiencing the life of an artist right now. The complete uncertainty, the total inconsistency, the needing to live in your core values, I actually felt some relief initially that I didn't feel so alone, because it's been rough. It's been a hard road. And I just felt like, wow, people need what I have to offer right now, and what so many of, brilliantly creative people and friends that I have, it's like need to rise to the occasion. So I felt almost a creative responsibility, and yet also it felt like, a much more natural time to show up. And so there's been a lot more collaborating. There's been a lot more, like, I felt less afraid to reach out to people even. I did this cover song we were talking about earlier, What the World Needs Now, because I just felt like this song, is needs to be revived. And it was an opportunity to collaborate with someone that I've wanted to collaborate with for a while. So it was like a remote quarantine collaboration. And it felt to me like people were much more open to that in general, and open to having these conversations and supporting each other in ways that we really should be doing all the time. But, it's like you said, it's, being on the hamster wheel. It's so easy to get caught up in the day to day. And so anyway, that's the gist of what my experiences have been. And I'm still feeling it. Like, oh yeah, I'm loving this. I'm loving being a part of this. I'm loving these conversations. I just want to be connected in a way that I haven't felt in years and years. So
absolutely. Tabatha, tell us what have you been doing? How has COVID changed how you view your art, and what's been inspiring you? Like, where are you now?
I went through all of the cycles, like the just laying around the house and staring at the wall, to I read 12 books over the summer. I went through a lot of wine we will not discuss. And I went through all of those different iterations, but then I realized that the one thing that made the most sense to me was to dance. And it was really the first time I had danced for myself. I'm so used to teaching and producing work for other people. I finally was just giving myself space to dance for myself. And that was pretty rewarding. And it's something that I did over and over and over again. And I took many classes. I think I just looked at the register. I took 64 classes over the course of this pandemic, all online, all in my tiny apartment, or on my back porch so my neighbors can watch. And I just took the time to really get back into my art, because I was so used to churning it out and producing and feeding and supplying people with what they needed. I had to turn around and do that myself. So I became my own student in a way. And that was really great. And just connecting with people. I had conversations with people for hours and hours and hours, which normally you can't have because everybody's doing their own thing. And so just to have conversations about art and work and where our field's going and what hasn't been working, and now we're faced with it and how do we change it? Those are the conversations that I found the most valuable, because I felt like, again, like Gregory said, I was connected finally in a different way, in a way that I needed to feed my soul so that I can feel like I can go on, because it's scary.
Absolutely. Wow, man. Yeah. It is so amazing to have both of you here. So I'm a fan of both of your works, Tabatha, and Tabatha, you and I have gone dancing before. So all night. So, and it literally is a thing where whenever I'm on the dance floor, and Tabatha, this, we literally are in a different world. Like, it is not, and it's totally like you can dance alongside me, but there's no dancing with me, because at some point in the song, I'm going to need to really shine bright. And if you don't know the choreography, you're going to be in my way. So, but we're going to get to like just situations we've encountered. But there's a question that we have. Do you feel that virtual concerts will be the new normal? So we have
absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's where it's going. Greg?
Yeah, probably for a while, certainly. Yeah, and it's so interesting because it's like I remember when I mean, I've been playing virtual house concert. I've been playing house concerts, but virtual concerts for years,
Yeah.
and having a really hard time getting anyone to take me seriously with the virtual. It's just like, so I've kind of done it as like fundraisers, for albums and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it's been, I never thought it would be a thing.
Yeah.
To what it's become. But I think it's great because we're finally using this technology for good reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it has the potential to reach greater audiences. I know with certain professional companies during the pandemic, they've been releasing full-blown pieces that we would never get to see unless you pay the $100 or whatever to go see the performance live. So having that kind of access, I think, is something that's new and exciting, and I hope people will use that as a medium as we go forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I talked a little bit earlier about how when I went out dancing on Sunday to the tea dance, it was so weird. And the way that I described it to a friend of mine was, how when a limb goes numb, like your arm goes numb and it starts to tingle and you can touch it and you should be feeling something, but you get that feeling like there's nothing there. That's what it felt like. It felt like the music was bouncing off of my body, and how I would normally respond to it, I knew that I should have a response, but that was just like not even there. And it caused me to go into this anxiety attack, and I ended up leaving. And so I want to talk to you about, and I shared, when I can't dance, just music moves me. Like Greg, when you can't, if you can't sing or play, what are some other things that you go to that give you passion, or that can really kind of reignite, or just kind of really hold you in the space of just being vulnerable?
Sex.
Oh,
I mean, I don't know. We'll keep this PG, but I mean, for real, like, I think it was only the past few months where I'm just like, oh, when people ask me usually like, well, what do you like to do outside of music? Like, what do you do for fun, recreation, and I'm like, I guess sex is my favorite recreation. I mean, really, like, other than that, it's just like food. I love cooking and dinners with good friends and good wine. Cooking has become a much more of a fulfilling creative outlet that feels like it's just you get to look forward to it several times a day.
Right.
But same with sex.
Yeah, awesome. Tabatha, what about you? When you,
I don't know, I got stuck on sex, so I
think we all did.
I like other mediums of art, though. Like, I will dive into music. I'll do a deep dive into my music library, and I'll start to research artists that maybe I haven't listened to any new stuff in a while. I used to go to art museums, which we can't do right now, but I will just, do deep dives on different kind of artists and think about visual art. And I attempted to paint this summer and it was terrible, but I had a really good time doing it. So those are the things that I like to do. And sometimes it's just about resting. Like, that's the thing that I've learned to do well. And I don't think I was always resting properly, but now I have figured out how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But Darius, when you talk about that feeling, that tingly feeling where you don't know what's going on, you and I have been in a room together dancing where we didn't talk for hours. We were standing right next to each other, dancing our hearts out, feeling the vibe, and we didn't even look in each other's direction, but we were together. And then at the end, we just felt so connected to each other, where we didn't even have to have a conversation. We would just give each other a look and just be like, yeah. And you know, and that's the thing that I love about moving, because I have found so many of those moments for myself just in giving myself class and figuring out, like waking up in the morning and going, what do I need today? Maybe I'll give myself a ballet class. Maybe I'll do my old more modern warm up and see if I can still get my leg up. You know, like all of those things are the things, and I can, by the way. All of those things are the things that come up for me. So I know that feeling well, and it's a good feeling. And I know it kind of caught you off guard, but that's the way dance performers feel when they are on stage. Like you can't feel your limbs, you know, they're moving and you know you're articulating movement, but there are some moments where your body is not connected to your spirit. It's just it's levitating on a whole nother level. And I was talking to someone about that the other day, because he's a professional basketball player, and I said, do you get that feeling like right before you go on stage or right before you go on the court, like where you feel like you're going to throw up and you can feel every cell in your body? And he was like, yeah, you get a little nervous, but it's not the same because it's the individual person. Like when you're on a team, it's everybody working together. But when you're dancing, it is all you. And it is the most organic, humanistic, holistic feeling. And that's the thing as a dancer and a performer that I'm always trying to chase.
Yeah, absolutely. We're about out of time for the show. I have an audience question. Mostly I would say it's for Greg, because he's the one that brought up sex, but it says, how are you navigating sex in these COVID times? But you got in-house penis. So
I do.
I don't want to talk about I mean, you got a whole husband, a whole other human being.
But you know, that doesn't always mean it's happening.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
No, but I think that's a fair question, because like we were talking about before, I now think of sex and creativity as hand in hand. I mean, it's such a form of self-expression, and similar to dance. I mean, it's the movement and the exploration that you can really bring to the table.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if you're not being creative right now, I'm just saying.
Yeah. And actually, we're out of time, and that question really sets us up for our next show next week, because we're going to be talking about self-care therapy, and sex is going to be a part of that conversation. I'm going to have a couple guests on there. Hopefully, I'm going to confirm that I'm going to have a sex therapist on as well. A sex educator on as well. She might be a sex therapist too. But so yeah, we're going to definitely talk about self-care and all that kind of great stuff. Here's some resources as always. Tabatha and Greg, if there's just one takeaway that you want to give everybody before we sign off here. Either one of you.
I would say to remind people to feed your soul. No one else is going to ask you what you need. You need to ask yourself, and do it every day. Do it often as you can. When you feel something happening, trust your gut, listen to yourself, and feed your soul, and whatever that means.
Yeah. And I would add to that, like, get involved, have conversations like this. This is feeding my soul right now. It's just, you know, I love the times that we're at right now. I feel like I've been fortunate enough to have a platform like music to really use my voice, and yet I see in hindsight how silent and complacent I've been in so many other ways.
Wow.
So I don't want to be anymore. I want to speak up even beyond the shield and the protection of music. And I want to have conversations. I want to be involved. I want to be connected. I think that's what we all really live for at the end of the day. So I'm grateful for this. And you know, I'm glad to know you both.
Yeah, absolutely. The two of you hang on, because I'm going to get y'all connected, because Greg's going to be in San Fran and Tabatha lives in San Fran and all that kind of great stuff. You just do a social distancing wine night or something.
Yeah. No sex.
Yeah. No.
I think you both are good in that category, and we're going to leave it right there. episode. Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode. You can definitely connect with Tabatha and Gregory through City Love Speaks. Join us tomorrow night for our City Love Speaks episode at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. And yeah, we'll just take you out with another song by Greg that I absolutely love. So yeah.
Well, she wanted to be with me, but she wanted to sail the sea and make her grandfather proud the way your father did in 1960. Like I said, she wanted to be with me, but she wanted to sail